최준.
여기에서 이런 원정골이 김진수의 발끝까지 터졌어요.
The header is good, and it's the giant defender John Tae-wook, and eventually Korea have broken the deadlock.
You're listening to the K-League United podcast, proud partner of Football Nation Radio.
Hello, 안녕하세요. Ryan Walters in the Kim Do-hoon bunker. Why not? This week we'll call it the Kim Do-hoon bunker. Joined by Matthew Binns.
Hello.
And where the fields are still alive with the sound of music, it's Pete Hampshire.
Hello. Hopefully you can't hear those dogs barking outside too loudly. the Kim J dogs.
It's always something in Kim J, isn't it? Gentlemen, welcome. There's only one real way that we can start this week's podcast, and that is by saying, damn you, Bucheon. Damn you, Bucheon. Because I like Bucheon. I like the new stadiums, the new stands they put in their stadium. I like their kits. I like so much about what Bucheon's doing, but they went and got a red card early on, and I am officially out of the K-League Survivor Series. With shame.
I think most writers are, though, judging by the picks for round 13. There's only 3 writers left and 5 patrons left. So once again, it shows just how much expert knowledge we possess when it comes to these things.
I'm so glad we're getting that out of the way out of the top. I will say, in my defense, I was undone by my heart. Because when we went over to Gangwon to watch Gangwon play, I wanted to, as the baseball song says, root for the home team. And I did, and it cost me a life. And then Suwon cost me a life. I should have known better than to think that the Suwon Samsung Blue Wings would do anything but break my heart. And then Bucheon let me down, and I'm out. But it's fine. I'm not bitter. Not the slightest, because later that night, the Jeonnam Dragons got a 94th minute penalty. Hey, Clint. Got a 94th minute penalty to draw things level with Paul Neitz, Daejeon Hana Citizen, and so I didn't lose the KLU Editors Derby of the weekend. Quite happy about that.
With 10 men as well.
Oh, was that the case, Pete? I don't even remember. Who remembers these things? Hi, Paul. Anyway, so that was my weekend, gentlemen. How was your weekend?
Socially distanced kind of weekend. We're still kind of reeling from the second wave of COVID cases here in Korea. Football's still going on. We're not quite at level 3. I think it's been deemed 2.5. It's going to be an intense week of close to lockdown measures here. Well, as close as Seoul has ever got to lockdown, I suppose. But it's going to be an intense week. Cases are leveling off in the capital, but they are raising elsewhere, which is a bit concerning. But hopefully it can stay under control. And very socially distant weekend for me. Lots of computer games and just me sitting in my pants, really. Just
what an image.
Yeah.
All right.
Everybody's having this. Everybody's listening to this while they're watching the tea. Well, watching the tea, having the tea rather. But yeah.
Okay. Well, we're just going to move on to what we're talking about this week. I don't need a proper transition from that. Anyway. The thing that we have to talk about off the top, there was the double dragon derby. Sung-yueng made his return for FC Seoul and did what FC Seoul has done against Ulsan this year and got trounced. But it was great to see him back on the field, so we'll be talking a little bit about that. I mean, speaking of getting trounced, we'll be talking about a 10-goal affair in Daegu. Daeon got on the scoreboard early, and I thought, this would be a fun night. I didn't know that there were going to be 10 goals between them, so we'll talk about that. Speaking of fun, and this is one of the reasons we have Matthew on, Gangwon does it again. We'll be talking about Gangwon beating Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors, and to further rub some salt in the gaping open wound that is every Jeonbuk Hyundai fan's heart right now, we will be talking about Kim Jin-su leaving a very big gap on the left side of Jeonbuk's defense. We'll talk about that. And we can't have a podcast without talking about the K-League 2. We'll be talking about the title race and how we're starting to see a little bit of distance there. Suwon and Jeju are opening up a bit of a gap, so we'll talk about that. And then I can't endlessly throw Paul Neat under the bus without us getting him in on this podcast. So we'll hear a little bit of a roundup on Korean football in general from Paul, and then we've got a mailbag, as always. So all sorts of things to get into. So, gentlemen, I've done most of the talking now, so Pete, I'm going to shift this over to you. Let's talk about Ki Sung-young's return. Let's talk about the Double Dragon Derby, as it's been called, where Ulsan Hyundai won 3-0 over FC Seoul. What were your main takeaways from either Ki's return or the match itself?
Yeah, a great match for Kim Do-hoon's side, and coupled with Jeonbuk's loss, that now opened up a 4-point gap at the top of the table, and we've only 9 games left. Then it's getting to that stage of the season where these results are really important, and Seoul actually had more possession in the game but only managed 1 shot on target. Obviously it was great to see Ki Sung-young every time, even in the first half when the ball went out for a throw in, the camera panned round to him on the bench.
Oh yeah.
And they did improve when he came on, but then at the same time Ulsan were 2-0 up, they were coasting, and the real star of the show was Gwangju in the Ulsan midfield, in the kind of similar role to what Ki plays. And I think Bento was at that game, was he? So a fantastic performance.
I think there for a very good reason. Another highlight package for Gwangju out on Twitter right now for folks that haven't seen it yet. And yeah, like you say, he seems to be the heir apparent for the Korean national team at the position that Ki occupied for so very long. But Matthew, once again, we talk about him every week. We can't not talk about him. Junior Nagao just keeps doing it. He just scores when he wants. Had another nice one in here where I'm still not 100% sure if the ball was going to go in or not. I don't think it was, but it was coming across the face of goal, and he made sure it went in. And he had another good match, and Ulsan had another good match. And I'm not being shecky throwing it to you here, talking about how good Ulsan looked, but what were your takeaways from this one?
Well, quite frankly, Junior's getting a bit annoying now. You just have a week off. Just keeps finding the goal. Ulsan just looked great, don't they? I mean, Seoul, they've had a bit of a revival since Chae-Young-soo's left, but they were never really going to trouble Ulsan here. And I think a lot was being played on Ki potentially turning things around, and he was never really going to be doing that in this match, not against a club of Ulsan's stature at the moment, and hasn't played hardly at all this year. So this is some of his first minutes of 2020. So yeah, it was a routine victory in the end. I mean, I felt sorry for Park Chung-yong. Everybody's former Premier League stars, Chung-yong, Ki Sung-young, and it's like Park Chung-yong sitting there hang on. I was there once as well, but
yeah, I think once is being the operative word there.
Yeah, no, but routine victory for us. They do look good, don't they?
They still talk about him in North London, Park Chung-yong.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
If you ride on that tube around North London, there's nothing else that you hear.
Well renowned. Yeah, I think, like you say, Matt, I don't think Ki was going to be able to do too much in this match. I think Seoul was always going to be up against Ulsan, and in-form Ulsan, and they've been in form for a long time. Our own Dan Croydon had an interesting series of tweets that he put out on Tuesday this week with just how many days it's been since Ulsan's lost to a team other than Pohang or Jeonbuk. I won't spoil that. I'll just say go ahead.
They're the ones that matter, don't they?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And I think on the Ulsan side of things, those are the ones that matter, and I still think if Ulsan beats Jeonbuk the next time they play each other, that's when I'll finally be convinced they're going to win this title. Until that happens, I'm not. I'm just not.
It's not long either. It's coming up soon. It's on a midweek night in Jeonju.
It's coming up too soon for Jeonbuk, I think, at the moment, based on this weekend's performance.
Well, we'll get to them in just a second, but before we move on from this match in FC Seoul, they have Busan coming up to Seoul this weekend. I think that'll be a much more comfortable performance. I think we'll probably see more of Ki. Maybe he gets the start in that one. This is a Busan side that's been up and down. They're coming off of a loss against Suwon, a team that was just 3 points ahead of Incheon coming into the weekend. We should say the Great Escape is still on. We never doubt the Great Escape, but they are a little bit further behind after this previous weekend. Incheon did lose and Suwon did pull off a victory there, which was much, much, much needed for Suwon, but they are just 6 points above Incheon. But Busan, a team that we've been talking about safety for a long time, they're still 8 points clear of Incheon, but if they're not careful, I think they could get dragged down into this because they're so out of sorts right now. And so I think it's a perfect time for FC Seoul to kind of figure out what they've got going on there, because that midfield already has so much talent. It's already so clogged up. but you have to put Ki Sung-yong in there. And I think just the little bit that we saw of him, I thought he definitely looked the part. So I think it'll be a big test this weekend because, like you guys are saying, against Ulsan, I don't think that was ever really going to go any other way. We'll talk more about Ki Sung-yong as it goes, and I'm sure you've seen all of the articles and all of the pictures of him in the whopping half hour that he was in there, not even half hour that he was in there. So once he plays more, we'll have a little bit more to talk about there. It is exciting. It's exciting to see him and Lee Chung-yong on the same field in K-League. But yeah, again, I think the talking points here were that Ulsan continue to look strong, and Gwangju Jae, I mean, I will say this now, enjoy him while he's here, because I do not think, especially if Ulsan get the title this year, I don't think that young man sticks around for too long. And why would he? Because the way he's playing right now, I think he could make the step up to some of the bigger leagues immediately. He just looks fantastic. So keep an eye on him for now.
He's a big physical presence as well. He's not like he's just some kid with some potential. He looks ready-made. Yeah,
looks the part. And is a delight to watch. And again, get him while you can. Speaking of getting him while you can, Pete, have Gwangju ever scored 6 goals?
Well,
this was
that
insane.
was the research I was supposed to do at school this afternoon, isn't it? Yeah, that was it. I knew I had something on the to-do list.
This match, Daegu hosted Gwangju FC. This one finished 6-4 in Gwangju's favor, and this is one that talked about at the top. Daeon scored 2 minutes in, thought, oh, lovely. Love a first half goal. Opens things up. Boy, did it open things up. Oh, my goodness. This game, it had 3 goals in the first half, so you think, okay, this is going to be good. And then 7 more goals went in the second half. And this was all over the place. There were lead changes galore. What? This was madness. Pete, you're our Gwangju columnist, so I'm gonna just throw this over to you. Madness.
It was the last game of the weekend, wasn't it? So you've watched 5 games, and then you just put the last one in the background when you were a bit footballed out, and then I don't think anyone could take their eyes off it. Daegu looked questionable, to say the least, at the back. But I was thinking, what was it that was making Gwangju such threats on the counter-attack? And I think, obviously, it's a strong front three. But for me, it's so strong because those first-choice players, Willian on the left wing, Won-sang on the right wing, and Felipe in the centre, they're so different from each other, so well-balanced. Felipe's obviously got the power and the goals. Won-sang is just rapid and only 21 years old, another one who might not be on the Korean shores for too long. And Willian on the left is just a composed winger who's put some good balls in and with a bit of flair as well. They've all got different attributes to each other.
Yeah, he had a tremendous match, Willian did, and Felipe ended up taking the man of the match for this one. And personally, I feel like it should have went to Willian because the second goal that Felipe scores is set up in large part by Willian and everything that he does on that one. But I mean, yeah, this one was absolutely insane. And I think one of the most shocking things was how many Daegu conceded. And Matt, how do you console Rika the Hedgehog after this one? What's gone wrong with Daegu? This is a team that we've been talking about. I mean, when they're on, and they look great. And they're not out of ACL contention yet by any stretch of the imagination, but they've lost 3 out of 4 and conceding 6. I don't care who it is, when it's happening. That's got to be a wake-up call.
Well, I think the last couple as well were probably down to almost chucking the towel in. That defence just looked absolutely destroyed by Gwangju's front three. But the first goal they conceded was a penalty. It was just clumsy. It was clumsy to concede. Won-sang wasn't going anywhere. He was moving away from goal, and he just put his arm around him, and rightly went down, and stonewall penalty. And it wasn't as well that Daegu were bad in attack. They were actually quite good in attack. They hit the bar 3 times. One of them did result in the penalty, but 2 of them, they hit the bar. They could have gone in. It could have been a different match as well. It was just end to end. Daegu just, once they went behind, they just threw everything forward, and in typical fashion, they just exposed what is quite a young defensive line. I mean, we've praised them because there are good defensive talents in that back line, but they were just not ready for that front three from Gwangju. And what I have to say about Gwangju is that the way they were just so direct. When they got the ball, they just ran at them. And they look shell-shocked, this Daegu defence. And I can't even blame the goalkeeper too much. Daegu's goalkeeper, Sung-yueng, he made the best effort he could to get to some of those shots, but they were all really good goals from Gwangju as well. Maybe just a bad day at the office for Daegu in some respects, but
there was a lot of space in that midfield, though. I mean, Im Min-hyuk's goal, which went in at the 80th minute, which was the backbreaker, really, because that put him up 5-3 at that point. I mean, Cecina got one late on, which was a tremendous goal, by the way. I mean, it sucks that it came when they were losing 6-3, but it was a really great goal that he got late on. But Im Min-hyuk has just allowed half of the field. Everybody just let him waltz right in. It was a great shot that he put on, but I mean, you can't give a professional that much time and space.
No.
I spoke to our Daegu columnist Jung Mu-yeol, and that Im Min-hyuk goal demonstrated what he said perfectly, because Mu-yeol was saying that Jung Tae-wook was getting dragged out by Felipe, who was dropping deep, and it just left a huge space behind Jung Tae-wook, who also had a slight knock for that game, apparently. If he wants a slight excuse from us.
I would take any excuse if I was a defender that night. Any excuse is great. I'll take it.
Yeah, and Mu-yeol was also suggesting that perhaps Lee Byung-gun's tactics were just too bold at 2-2. You know, they were back into the game, and it just seemed like both teams were persistent in scoring the next goal at any cost.
Yeah, and now we see Gwangju just 1 point off of 6th place. They're just one behind Gangwon right now, and Gwangju could potentially get up into the top 6 in their first year back in K1. This is a side that we've talked about maybe fallen into the relegation fodder, and had they not won this match, they would be on the same points as Suwon. I mean, both divisions are really close in a lot of ways right now, and I think that's one of the other reasons that this was such a massive win for Gwangju. And man, I want more of this, because this is the K2 side that we saw just storm through last year.
Definitely. And just an interesting fact, I'm actually trying to find the source of it where I saw it on Twitter, but the last 10-goal match in the K-League involved your side, Ryan.
Oh, I remember. It was against Suwon, and we won.
It was against Suwon, and in that match, Dae and Damjanovic also scored 2 goals, and Daegu's current manager, Lee Byung-gun, was the caretaker, was the assistant manager for Suwon. He wasn't in charge. So Jung-won, it was the final days before So Jung-won quit. And then later came back. But Lee Byung-gun was also on the touchline that day for Suwon. Not saying Dave's at fault, by the way, in case he's listening. I'm not saying.
What was the score? Was it 6-4 in that one as well?
6-4 for John Man, yeah.
That was, what a night. We still got relegated, but what a night it was. Yeah, and should point out, speaking of Daeyeon, I mean, he's doing what he can there. He's up to 6 this season, which doubles his goal output from last year. He just wasn't getting the game time last year, really. And so nice to see him getting on the scoreboard. We obviously wish him well. And, when you score 4 goals, that should be enough to win. Yeah. That ought to do it. But we had a lot of questions come in our rushed edition of the mailbag talking about Daegu and what's gone wrong there. And I think, to me, the defense can kind of be worked around. It's just every time I've seen them get torn apart, it's been in the midfield, and it's been right up the gut. Like you were saying, Matt, Gwangju just ran at him without any fear whatsoever, and they were going down the wings for that a little bit, but also they just attacked the middle pretty much when they wanted to, and there was usually a lot of space there. So Daegu's got to get that sorted out if they're going to be able to get into this ACL race at all.
Yeah, it was naivety from them, really, and they're going to have to sort out because they've got Pohang this weekend.
Yeah, and that's a big one coming in because Pohang, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to go through all of the matches, but Pohang had a very entertaining match. They ended up coming back and beating Songnam 2-1. Ilyachenko just went off in this one and showed why he's so valuable to them, why he's second in the Golden Boot race this year. And 12 and 18 is usually a pretty good return, but Junior is doing Junior things this year, so he is miles ahead in the Golden Boot race there. But Ilyachenko is having a hell of a year for Pohang, and like you say, that's not an easy task for Daegu right now.
Fantastic conditions at that Pohang game as well. Did you see the amount of rain on the pitch? Just a nice change for us this summer in Korea.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We'll see what the weather's like this weekend. There's another typhoon on its way. up here, so we'll see how that goes. But we're going to take a really quick break, and then we're going to come back, and I don't even know if I'm going to talk. We're just going to listen to Matthew Binns cry for 10 minutes straight about Jeonbuk losing to Gangwon FC once again. We'll be right back.
FNR is a revolutionary football-dedicated digital platform, the first of its kind in Australia. It provides a 24/7 live online radio platform experience, podcast hub, and acts as a content provider for TV, radio, and digital. Having reached millions of listeners and football fans since launching, FNR is accessible worldwide via its website or app, providing a platform to discuss, debate, and celebrate the world game. We are your voice of football, FNR Football Nation Radio.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Walters, joined by Pete Hampshire.
Hello.
And the reason that we brought him in, it's Matthew Binns to talk about Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors' 2-1 loss to Gangwon FC. Matthew, this one looked like it was going to go down the way that so many Jeonbuk matches do, where Han Kyo-won, who's had a tremendous year, Han Kyo-won gets an equalizer 88 minutes in, and then Kim Ji-hyun decides, I'm just going to go ahead and make a brace of it, gets one in the 90th, and Gangwon have beat Jeonbuk again this season. This is a week after we were talking about if Kim Jin-su should be relieved of his duties at Gangwon FC. So what I want to ask you is how much of this came down to what Gangwon did right, and how much of it is a cause for concern for Jeonbuk?
Okay, well, I think the interesting stat here is that Gangwon have only ever beaten Jeonbuk 5 times in their history. 3 of them have come under Kim Jin-su versus Jose Moraes. And also, Jeonbuk have lost a 3-1 lead in the last 2 minutes of injury time to Gangwon in that time. And also that 1-0 at the end of last season wasn't exactly a classic either. Jose Moraes' Jeonbuk does seem to struggle, it seems, against Gangwon. Now, I can't take full credit for this because it was an article that was going around in the week in the build-up to it, and I think it's only right to mention it here. But football coach Michael Boroff, he wrote an article about the concepts behind Byung-soo ball, and it seems only right to shout out about it here. But he talks about how Byung-soo ball, how Kim Jin-su likes to set up his team to use inverted fullbacks and all kind of crowd that central midfield, and that kind of, we've talked about how Jeonbuk are so ineffective as well, like. They like to play from the wing a lot. They don't like to go in the middle. And it just kind of, that central midfield was crowded a lot. And the weekend, I felt the game was actually going quite well at the beginning. The first 45 minutes, there wasn't too many clear-cut chances. Gustavo had a bad day, for sure. He missed an absolute sitter somewhere about the half-hour mark. But Jeonbuk were playing well. I think they were being a bit incisive. That they've got a youngster on the wing who looks to be the solution to the under-23 problem, Sung-yueng. He seems to have a lot of promise about him. He was making smart runs, and he was running at the defence and moving inside. And I was thinking to myself, well, they'll soon iron that out of him and get him crossing from the wing at some point. He's clearly too young and naive to know otherwise. It was nice football from both sides. Both sides were defending well. But then the second half came, and we are going to get into Kim Jin-su's departure in detail. Yes. But as we said, this was the first game without Kim Jin-su. And oh boy, I mean, Jeonbuk have played games without Kim Jin-su before because he's not exactly one for discipline. Kim Jin-su. Yes. So they do have options, but if this is going to be the option to carry them through 3 competitions, Lee Ju-yong might have a lot of catching up to do. Now, Lee Ju-yong was really good at moving forward. He actually set up 2 of Gustavo's perfect chances to take the lead. He was really good at moving into space. I can only compliment him there, but when it came to defending, he kept pulling himself inside and leaving whoever's on the left, whether it be Ko Mu-yeol, well, on Gangwon's right, Ko Mu-yeol, and giving them time to shoot. I mean, the warning was there before they even scored. Ko Mu-yeol got a shot away. Look, it skewed it wide, but that was Lee Ju-yong just let him run in front of him. Lee Ju-yong backing off the ball to control it, didn't catch Ko Mu-yeol running to the side of him. And when the first goal came around, he was nowhere near Kim Ji-hyun. He was pulling away from him, and Kim Ji-hyun just got the goal. And then once they took the lead, Jeonbuk did fight them back into it. Like you said, Han Kyo-won, late equaliser, looked to be doing Jeonbuk things, and then they conceded again. It was Lee Ju-yong. It was down Gangwon's right, Jeonbuk's left, and Komyo got a shot away, was given the freedom of Jeonju to get a shot away by Lee Ju-young, and Lee Ju-young kind of even obscured Son Bum-kun's vision. Son got it, just reacted with a palm out, and it just fell straight to the feet of Kim Ji-hyun to slot away. So, yeah, it's worrying, really, how much of an absence Kim Jin-su seems to already be having. Now, Lee Ju-young might just need to get up to speed. He's not a bad player. I think Gangwon noticed that weakness in the second half, and they targeted it. And it was clever play by manager Kim Jong-soo on that part.
Yeah. I think we'll see a lot more of what's going to happen with Jeonbuk in the coming matches, because they do have Ulsan looming, like you guys were saying. That's going to be coming up on the 15th. So like that's coming up real quick. But before that, they do have Songnam and they have Gwangju FC, two teams that you've seen quite a bit of this year, Pete. So would you be expecting... I asked you a question that I'm going to answer for you. The thing about Songnam and Gwangju, I think they're both going to sit back and show Jeonbuk a little bit too much respect. But am I wrong there? Do you think that they will try to attack Jeonbuk's left side with Kim Jin-su out?
Gwangju, obviously, what I write about the most, they definitely will. I think they did it against Ulsan at home. We saw Gwangju really give them a good go and nearly ruin that stat that he talked about from Dan earlier. That was 1-1 down in Gwangju. If I was on Wonsang on that right wing, and I'd be fancying myself, I mean, Lee Ju-young is going to have a lot of pressure on him, isn't he? He's going to need some nice words in the ear from Jose, some good man management from the king of Barnsley's history to sort him out.
I was wondering how long it was going to take before Barnsley got a mention there. But yeah, so obviously we've talked a lot about Jeonbuk here, because I think that's the surprise here. But Gangwon, they stopped a winless streak that had gone on and on and on. And to get a win over Jeonbuk, no less, it has put them back into the top 6. They're currently 7 points off of Pohang right now for what we're kind of viewing as the current guaranteed ACL spot, because, again, this year Sangju Sangmo will be getting automatically relegated, so they cannot qualify for Champions League, so that place will drop down. Sangju's currently in 3rd, so that'll drop down to Pohang. I mean, I don't think that Gangwon's going to have been in them to challenge for ACL, so to me, I don't know that this win really band-aids over what we were talking about last week. It's great. I mean, and for those of us that want a title competition, it's nice to see Ulsan opening up a lead, to see if Jeonbuk can come back and see what happens there. But from a Gangwon perspective, I think this is still them doing what they do. It was just one of the better days. And like you said, man, I think Gustavo misses a lot of chances. If he hits even one of those, then the points are shared. So,
yeah, and I think, Jeonbuk did come into the back of this game 5 games in winning a 5-game winning streak. So it's not like it is kind of an anomaly, this result, but I think Jeonbuk let Gangwon grow in confidence, where if Gustavo would put that first goal away in the first half, I think completely different game, and Jeonbuk could have gone on to win it.
I've never seen a manager look as stressed as Kim Jong-soo at the end, by the way. Even when your team scored a last-minute winner, when the full-time whistle went, he sat down on the bench, put his mask over his eyes, which is a new one, and just had a little moment to himself. And
that's not a new one. That's
pressure on him, because
that's the Gareth Bale, man. That's the Gareth Bale. We've all seen that one. But yeah, like you say, I think he does have some pressure on him, and I think that that's necessary. And next week, or this coming weekend, I should say, is going to be a tough one for those of us here on the podcast, because I think we like to see Gangwon do well, and we all want the great escape to happen, but they're facing each other this weekend. So, I mean, to me, we've talked about what Jeonbuk has coming up before they face Ulsan. For Gangwon, they've got Incheon, Pohang, Busan, and Suwon. Pohang, obviously, is the big one in there, but, I mean, if you're Gangwon, if you're serious about this, I think you got to win 3 out of 4 of those there. And Pohang's the only one that I wouldn't expect them to go out and win. So we'll see. To me, I don't think they're really in too much of a tremendously different spot than they were when we were talking about them last week. Super happy that they got this win. And I love watching them play. I love the style that they play. But I think there are still a lot of concerns there for Gangwon. So we'll see what they do this weekend against a very plucky and always dangerous Incheon United. Anyway, Let's talk about the man. Let's just dive into this. The reason we were talking about Kim Jin-su so much kind of buried the lead on this one. But Matthew, a bit of mourning here. You need to stop buying kits of players that are going to leave.
I'm in competitions that are getting postponed as well. Yeah, I've got a AFC Champions League top with Kim Jin-su on it, and I have no idea when I'm going to be wearing that. No, yeah. I mean, he was... I think we've got to have the melancholy piano music, Uptown Girl, obviously, because that's what the foreign fans sung his name to anyway. I don't know. It's not often that we dedicate a segment to a player's departure, but this one seems difficult to ignore given his status and the rumoured size of the transfer and the significant ramifications it's going to have on this title race, I think. Okay, so last Sunday, Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors officially announced that they had respected the player's wishes and opted to sell Kim Jin-su to Saudi Arabian club Al-Nassr for an undisclosed fee. The rumoured amount in the press was quoted to be quite significant, into the few millions, with reports of Kim also being set to earn up to 3 times his current salary. Up until this, Kim was already the highest paid player in the league. He was earning approximately $1.2 million in 2019 as his base pay and had a contract that was set to expire at the end of this campaign. Jeonbuk were initially willing to let the player's contract run down for the sake of their season, potentially risking him leaving on a free. It was also reported that Jeonbuk wouldn't be able to match the player's current contract and would probably have to ask him to take a decrease in pay, especially, with all the ramifications of COVID and things this year on attendances and things. But by letting him go, Jeonbuk have now going to rely on their existing depth within the squad because the Korean transfer window is closed. So Jeonbuk can't bring anybody in now until the end of the season. I'll discuss more about that in a second, but first it's probably worth talking a little bit more about Kim Jin-su himself. Alongside Hong Chol, he's arguably one of the best left-backs in the league for the last 5 years. He returned to Korea to his hometown of Jeonju at the start of 2017 at just the age of 23. I think people forget how young he was when he came back to the K-League. He's not in his 30s at all. He's 28. He's in the prime of his career. Yeah. And he came back after a spell at Hoffenheim that saw his playing time gradually reduce. And with more and more bench appearances, he saw the opportunities to go back and make a name for himself and get himself back in contention for the national team. So it was a smart move, really, by him. He marked his arrival, scoring a free kick against Jeonnam on his debut. I just thought I'd mention that just for no apparent reason. But he became known for his crossing and his set pieces. And over the course of that season, he featured in the league's best 11. It's also worth mentioning 2018, he had a season-long injury, probably exacerbated by Shin Tae-yong's insistence on bringing him back for the World Cup, which proved fruitless in the end. And he featured prominently throughout 2019 in helping secure his and the club's 3rd consecutive league title. He did divide a lot of opinion as well. Opposition fans weren't exactly his biggest fans. He boasted an unwanted disciplinary record, and he often showed signs of perhaps petulance, which turned a lot of opposition fans against him. But that said, if he played for you, it kind of endeared you to him. Like, there's never any doubt that he didn't care about what was happening on the pitch. Anyway, this is reading a bit like a eulogy, and it shouldn't be, but it feels like it, right? Because he is such a massive cog.
He leaves behind one Matthew Binns.
Yes. Well, he leaves behind one Matthew Binns upset in the North Stand on his own, crying into his away shirt that he's bought and can never wear. But no, now he's left. It means that Lee Joo-yong, as we've already mentioned, is probably going to be the backup. They could also bring in Chae-chul-sun, but the only issue for Jeonbuk is their right back, Lee-yong, can't handle 2 games within 4 days. So Chae-chul-sun's going to be needed out on the right. So it does mean Lee Joo-yong's going to have to step up at left back now. And based on the evidence of the weekend, that's a bit worrying. It also cuts their supply to the strikers significantly, because you saw last weekend against Sangju, both goals were assists from Kim Jin-su. To be honest, it's the left rear wheel has fallen off the back of Jeonbuk's motor. So I'm going to say.
Okay. All right, Pete. On that note, Pete, I'm going to bring you in here, because to me, I think this is a good bit of business from Jeonbuk. I think they've won this league so many times, and there's no, he leaves a big pair of shoes to be filled. But to me, they're not out of title contention without him automatically. And if you've got a player who's on an expiring contract, and you can make the kind of money that's being rumored for this on an expiring contract, to me, you've got to take that. He gets a pay raise. The club gets to recoup some of the money that they spent on Barrow and Gustavo. And to me, it's a really good bit of business. But that's on the slightly colder side of things. So, Pete, I'm wondering where you're at with this whole move.
Well, I think they've got slightly lucky there because it's quite poor organisation to leave your star men, the highest paid player, with just 3 months on your contract. In an ideal world, maybe he didn't want to sign it. Maybe you'd want him to sign another contract with a year to go. So I think they've got slightly lucky to get some money for a player with only 3 months left of the season and his contract. He played fantastically well in his final game, didn't he? Which was good to see.
Did.
And you could tell by his body language that it was his last game. There's never been a more obvious final interview. He looked like he was close to tears like Binns in the North Stand. What I was going to ask Binns is, because with Jeonbuk this year, one of the big issues has been the under-22 rule, where they've been kind of playing chess with Lee Soo-bin and Cho Kyu-sung. Surely it's a perfect opportunity for Jeonbuk to get a young fullback in a position that's not so vital to the team.
You'd think so. I mean, it is now a vacant role for somebody to step into, and
Obviously I'm talking about next season, not this season.
Oh yeah, because I was going to say this season, it would be somebody very unproven if it was going to be somebody this season, and probably not the best title race to throw him in.
Do it.
Yeah, I think Jeonbuk have to look for a starting under-23 player coming into the new season next year, and that is a role that's now vacant. So yeah, a young left back. Suddenly Jeonbuk could very well be sniffing around if your club's got one. So.
I would suggest that they stick with K1 this year, because I don't think it worked out bringing Cho Kyu-sung up from K2. I think he needed another year either at a slightly smaller club, or honestly, I think he should have just stayed with Anyang. But we talked about that ad nauseum. You can't say no to that. But I mean, to me, I don't think Kim Jin-su or Jeonbuk can say no to this deal. And for Kim Jin-su, he gets to remain in Champions League. He gets to play in a different environment. He gets to test himself abroad, because no, he didn't get Champions League here, but what didn't he get? An FA Cup. But he's won so much here. He's played at the highest level. He got paid as much as he's going to be able to get paid for Jeonbuk. So to me, this just makes a lot of sense. And it's also nice because now the title race is even more exciting.
No, but it's killed the title. Maybe I'm being a bit dramatic. Maybe it hasn't killed the title race, but I think, I don't know. You get to 3 months left in the contract. For me, it's because I know the depth in that squad. It's just, and there's so many games ahead. Jeonbuk aren't usually in the FA Cup. We can usually write that off. The fact there's an FA Cup as well to contend is just a luxury. And so many games in the Champions League, they're just not going to be able to handle all these games. It might have been beneficial for them to actually have a stab at winning those competitions with him in the squad. I do get it. Business-wise, it makes sense. They've made such a massive outlay on Gustavo and Barrow, and they probably do have to recoup that. And also, obviously, all the reduced attendances this season, probably need to reclaim some of that back this season. It does make sense from a business perspective, but just from wanting to win things, I feel that, I don't know. I can't see it from beyond the fan perspective. I just really wanted him to stay. I didn't think it would hurt me this much. I'm genuinely bitter. Just genuinely. I'm seething. I'm absolutely seething. And I do wish him well. I do, but
it's a shame for such a club legend that he couldn't play his last game in front of any fans, isn't it?
Yeah, it must be really difficult to win 3 championships in a row and then see a left back leave. My heart goes out to you, Binns. This must be so hard for you.
It's a title contention, isn't it? It's not like 2018 where Jeonbuk has 17, 18 points clear, and
it's true.
It's like they're 4 points behind Ulsan. They're not going to catch them now. I think this might be. I mean, Ulsan already have the advantage. Let's be honest. Ulsan are in pole position for it. Probably are going to win it now. I've said it.
Jeonbuk have Songnam and Gwangju and Busan before the split. That's
Gwangju away.
Hey, we've seen what they can do. Anyway, we've gone a little bit long on this one, so we're going to take a really quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about the division you all been waiting for. We're going to talk about the K-League 2 title race. We'll be right back.
Fans, we want to hear from you. You're encouraged to email KLU at info@kleagueunited.com or tweet at KLeagueUnited with any questions, comments or reactions. or follow us on Facebook to ask directly during one of our live shows.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Walters, joined by Matthew Binns.
Hello.
Stop crying. And we've got Pete Hampshire with us.
He's not coming.
Hello, mate. It's all right, Binns. We can't all win 6-4 on the weekend, can we?
We can. Speaking of teams that have won 6-4, the Jeonnam Dragons. No. But yeah, actually, the Dragons did factor into the weekend that was, because that last-minute penalty was the last kick of the game, and with that, they drew with Daejeon Hana Citizen, and that denied Daejeon 2 more points that would see them a little bit closer. But even had Daejeon won that match, there is a gap opening up here. JG United remains on top of the table since they've finished their game in hand. Everybody has now played 17, and Jeju is on top with 34 points, Suwon with 32. And then in third, Daejeon is on 27. At this point, Pete, are we looking at is it going to have to be a playoff run for Daejeon?
Yeah, this title race has actually got me fully into the K2 in the last week after my snobbery with Gwangju. Now they've been promoted. But yeah, Daejeon 7 points off Jeju. So, and you never know, they could even fall out of the playoffs, Daejeon. So Eland are coming up 2 points behind them. And Eland have got the easiest game on paper of the top 7 this weekend, with the other 6 playing each other. It's Gyeongnam against Jeju, Suwon, Jeonnam, and Daejeon, a huge game at home to Bucheon, and you never know which Bucheon's going to turn up, do you?
That's exactly what I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah. So possibly, yeah. I mean, my big tip for the K2 was Park Young-ji. So I don't know, Ryan, if you've been watching more of it, why he's not featured so much and why he's always on the bench.
Yeah, I think we actually had something come in the mailbag for that one, Matthew.
Yeah, we did. We had something in from Daejeon Citizen Fan Club Brazil. They were asking, what is your opinion about the new 4-1-4-1 formation implemented by Hwang Sung-hong in Daejeon with Adinho as the playmaker, and why so many changes in the lineup?
Well, I think that last part is kind of answering the question you asked me, Pete. I mean, like you say, Park Young-ji had a tremendous year for Sangju last year. I mean, the other thing is, like, we've seen this happen so many times where somebody has a tremendous season for Sangju and then they leave and they can't quite keep it going. It's whatever they're putting in that magical rice that they give away at halftime there. But to me, the issue, I'm never going to complain about a 4-back. Always a big fan of that. But to me, you can't have the attacking talent that Daejeon have and not utilize it better than a 4-1-4-1. I mean, sure, Bruno Bayo hasn't panned out as expected, but Andre Luis has got 12 goals this season, and I know they want to get Adinho going, but you've got Andre Luis, you've got Adinho, you've got Park Young-ji, you've got Bruno Bayo. Throw these guys in there in a formation that suits their skills a little bit better. So to me, the 4-1-4-1, it's what we've seen from Hwang Sun-hong before. To me, it's overly cautious, and this is a brand of football that we need to move away from in Korean football. Like this, we can't keep having these 5, 6, 7, 8 players behind the ball hoping for a 1-0 win. It's boring, and the world game is leaving that behind. Like that's not the way to win games anymore. And I think we're seeing that with Daejeon. It's not a lack of talent here. It's that they're just not being set up to win. Forgive me if that sounds familiar. This is what happened with FC Seoul when he was in charge. There was plenty of talent on that team. They shouldn't have been in the relegation battle when they were, but they were being handcuffed. And we're seeing that here. We've seen what Daejeon can offer. And I think we're seeing the difference on the touchline as well, because Suwon stumbled for a minute there. But the difference is Suwon has now won 2 in a row. They had a fantastic match over the weekend, came back against a red-hot Gyeongnam side, and ended up getting a win out of it, because I think Suwon is set up to succeed. Daejeon, on the other hand, I think they just keep getting handcuffed, and that formation, to me, is another one that just handcuffs them a little bit too much. Not that I have strong opinions about anything. But
yeah, it was the same last season at Daejeon. Obviously, I was watching more of them then, and the games against Gwangju were the dullest few games that I watched for Gwangju last year. It was just, I went to Daejeon away, and that was the worst game I watched of the season in terms of a attacking emphasis on the game. So it's interesting that even though Hannah Banks brought in that money, they've obviously brought in some top players, like you'd argue Andre Luis, the best player in the league, and they're still not having that much impetus going forward.
Well, I mean, if you think about the K2 winners of years past, you don't win K2 by being overly cautious. It's just not going to work. Gwangju won this by just barnstorming people and just going at them. Gyeongnam won this by just going at people. Asan won this by just going at people. Like, you can't... K2 is not a league that's built for caution. You can't really play that way in this division. And I think that's showing out with the teams that we see at the top. Jeju, they're not scoring as much as I would have expected, and I think that they're a more balanced squad. They kind of break this mold a little bit, but they are aggressive when they're on and when they're playing as well as they can. And I think we're seeing that because, again, the teams that are playing overly cautious are the teams that are at the bottom of the table right now. And, I think that's showing through. And speaking of teams that are playing attacking football right now, we've got another really tasty one this weekend in K-League 2. Gyeongnam is remaining at home, and we talked about this last week. Gyeongnam were a team on the rise, and I was really looking to the next two matches to see if they could keep it up. I thought they had a good showing against Suwon, but An Byung-jun is a difference maker, and he proved that last weekend and got Suwon the win. This is another massive match for them. They are at home against JG United. It's the first match of the K-League 2 weekend. It's at 6 o'clock locally here on Saturday, and I don't even know how to try to predict that one because Jeju is just red hot right now, but Gyeongnam, they've got it in them to win against anybody right now. So, Pete, I'll throw you under the bus again here. Who you got in that one?
I'll go for Jeju for that one away at Gyeongnam. Someone who's going under the radar down at Jeju is Kong Min-hyun, who I don't really know much about. 4 goals in his last 4, 8 goals this season, 2 assists, and that's just in 15 games. This makes it his most prolific season of his career, and I think he's around 30 years old. I don't know if you've seen much of him because he's not someone who was picked out in the preseason predictions.
No, like you say, I don't think there was too much expected of him. And, well, I mean, that it's really funny with Jeju because it's kind of been the unexpected names. Lee Dong-ro was named as the MVP of K-League 2 over the weekend. He had a brace in a very important match for them. He's all of 20 years old and got a brace against Anyang over the weekend and has been pretty integral to what they're doing down there. And I think it just shows the depth that they have at Jeju right now. And that is one of the things that we did praise them for in the offseason. Is they just built so well.
And as we said in last week's podcast, they've got a couple of players coming back from Sangmu as well. And that's just the kind of boost you need at the end of the season for the last 10 or so games. Yeah,
still would like to see something looked at there. But the other title contender as of right now, and we can say title contenders because there's still 10 games left in the K-League 2 season. But it's starting to look, it's getting really interesting for Daejeon. But anyway, Suwon are remaining at home and facing the mighty Jeonnam Dragons. Jeonnam they're not going to make that easy. I don't think Suwon's going to be intimidated by any stretch of the imagination, but Jeonnam can beat any team in this division on their day. So that's not necessarily an easy one. And like you say, Pete, I think it's going to depend which version of Bucheon shows up against Daejeon. Because Bucheon, again, damn you, Bucheon, never going to let it go. I'd still wear one of those kits, though. Love them. Anyway, they're making the trip down to Daejeon. And that's one of the 3 matches kicking off on Sunday at 7 o'clock. And to me, Daejeon have to win that one, right, Matt?
Yeah, well, yeah, definitely. As pointed out, 5th place, Seoul Eland, they're only 2 points behind them. And then Jeonnam are only 3 points behind them in 6th. It's quite tight between 3rd and 6th. And Daejeon lose ground here. Seoul Eland probably should pick up points against Anyang. I mean, Seoul Eland will Seoul Eland. You know, they're playing well on their day, and Seoul Eland will fancy their chances against Anyang. And Jeonnam could probably potentially sneak a draw against Suwon if they defend well enough. So suddenly, Daejeon could find themselves slipping further and further away. I mean, the 5 points as it is from 2nd place, and to lose any more ground in the title race and have to rely on playoffs, I'm sure the board, backed by Hannah Citizen, they will not be happy. I mean, they were targeting promotion first season. To spend that much and find themselves having to go through the playoffs to try and go up to K-League 1, it will not best please them.
No, I think if they get it in the end, then they'll be just fine. But yeah, they'll need a lot of things to go their way this weekend. Like I say, if Jeonnam can get a draw against Suwon and Daejeon can get a win, then they would just be 3 points off of Suwon's. I mean, K2's ever changing all the time, but To me, they just have to win that one. And yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll have all of the previews for that, obviously, on K-League United and KLeague.com this week. We weren't able to touch on everything in Korean football, but to give us a little bit of an assist for that, as I mentioned at the top, we can't have a podcast without hearing from Paul Neat. So in a very brief new segment, here's Paul Neat's Korean football roundup.
We start with the so-called Double Dragon Derby in K-League from over the weekend. Of course, this is referring to Chung-yong versus Sung-yueng. After 10 years, 9 months and 9 days, Sung-yueng made his long-awaited return to K-League in FC Seoul's round 18 fixture away to league leaders Ulsan Hyundai. Ki went up against longtime friend, the next teammate Chung-yong, the other half of the so-called Double Dragon. This, of course, refers to the last syllable in both their names, which can mean dragon in Korean. Ki returned to Seoul in July, but injury has prevented him from making his return up until now. He started on the bench and came on in the 70th minute, but during his time on the pitch, he had a passing accuracy of 92%, 83 for forward passes and 100% accuracy for passes made to the final third. He also won 60% of his duels. Seoul lost 3-0, so it wasn't the perfect return that he or FC Seoul fans would have been hoping for, but for Ulsan, the win and Jeonbuk's 2-1 defeat to Gangwon has now extended the Horangi's lead at the top to 4 points. Elsewhere in K-League, Daegu and Gwangju played out a 10-goal thriller to equal the record for the most goals scored in a K-League match. Gwangju ran out 6-4 winners despite falling behind early on. Daean got Daegu up and running after 2 minutes, but a Felipe penalty in the 24th minute restored parity for the visitors. Ashermatov made it 2 before Cezinia converted a penalty of his own just after half-time. Willian then restored Gwangju's lead just after the hour mark before Felipe's second put further daylight between the Yellows and the Sky Blues. Edgar Silva pulled one back on 67 minutes before Im Min-hyuk and Kim Ju-gong added goals for Gwangju on 80 and 82 minutes respectively. The scoring wasn't finished there though, but Cezinia's 94th minute penalty proved to be mere scant consolation. Over to Europe now, where some of the Korean national team stars were in action. Hwang In-jo helped Bordeaux onto a 2-0 win over Angers over the weekend, their first win of the new French season. He provided an assist for Toma Bastic in the 27th minute, deployed on the right-hand side of an attacking midfield 3 behind the main striker. Meanwhile in Spain, Lee Gang-in captained a youthful-looking Valencia side in a 0-0 friendly draw against neighbours Levante. And in the Russian Premier League, after bagging his first goal for the club last Thursday, Hwang In-bom made his first full appearance for Rubin Kazan, starting the 2-2 draw at home to Tambov. The former Daejeon midfielder now has 4 appearances to his name since joining from MLS side Vancouver Whitecaps. And finally over to London and to Wembley Stadium, where for the first time ever the Women's Community Shield was contested. Chelsea took on Manchester City, featuring Korean international forward Ji So-yeon. Ji provided an assist in the 66th minute for Millie Bright in Chelsea's 2-0 win and was also voted as player of the match. Ji has been with the current Women's Super League champions Chelsea since 2014 and has had a trophy-laden 6 years. That's all for this week, but there is more on KLeagueUnited.com.
Ulji Lewis is your neighborhood British bar and cafe located in the Old Jiro district of Seoul. Decorated in old English antiques and furniture for a true homely feel, you can enjoy homemade scones, cakes and afternoon tea during the day, and traditional British favourites like beef stew, English ale, and a fine selection of wines at night. Available for private parties or simply an evening out, Ulji Lewis is sure to become your favourite neighbourhood pub. Be sure to mention K-League United at the bar during your visit and you'll get 10% off your bill.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Walters, joined by Pete Hampshire.
Hello.
Oh, were you just thinking about your bike being gone? That was a very sad hello, Pete.
No, yeah, mate. And, yeah, my bike. I also fell off my bike this morning. It's tough times down in Gimje. Tough times.
Tough times indeed. And leading us through the Ulji Louise mailbag, it's Matthew Binns.
Hello. Okay, first out of the Ulgi Louise mailbag this week is Dan Croydon. Never heard of him. Says, hi Dan. Ulsan columnist Dan Croydon asking, do you think Felipe should move to a bigger team? Sorry, he apologises to Pete as well. And is he a potential Golden Boot winner next year?
Yeah, I mean, it could have been an option for Jeonbuk instead of Gustavo. They've obviously found it easier to settle in, being a Jolly boy already. It could have been a cheaper option as well. A bustling striker who knows where the net is. In terms of should he move, I guess Gwangju are never going to really be challenging for a Champions League space, which I think he's capable of. Just because of the finances behind Gwangju, you wouldn't expect them to push it into a regular top 3 side, would you? But for Felipe, he's definitely capable. If Junior ends up getting a big money move off the back of this 20-odd goal season, then perhaps it'd be a ready-made replacement for Ulsan as well. He'd have plenty of suitors, I'm sure.
Well, and he's also quite a bit younger than Junior is right now. Felipe is just 28. I bring this up all the time. I think he'd be a decent fit at FC Seoul.
Yeah, I mean, you'd expect he'd get a wage rise as well. Wherever he moved, any of those top 6 perennial sides.
I was going to say, he'd also do well at Suwon Blue Wings if they survive, because Suwon Blue Wings are due an overhaul. Mm-hmm. And we don't know, whether Adam Taggart will stick around at the end of the season because, he's not had the support that he got last year. And if the powers that be at Suwon decide to try and make a go of it again, then it could be a good option for them.
And I do think he is still underrated. He never gets injured, even though he takes some of the most fouls in the K-League. He gets absolutely clattered if you watch him week in, week out. But he's always there. It's a good job for Gwangju as well because they've not got many other strikers.
Fair.
Okay, let's go back into the mailbag. And Daejeon Citizen Fan Club Brazil is back in here. Which team is more reliable to choose in the K-League Survivor, Eland or Daegu?
I'm actually choosing between Eland and FC Seoul. So apparently there are 2 teams in Seoul this weekend. I can't decide which one to plump for. I think it's going to be Eland. So if I was the lad who wrote that question, I'd plump for Eland.
Against Anyang? Yeah. Then again, don't listen to me. I'm dead.
Yeah, so am I. So
I do have a life left, yeah.
Yeah, you're one of the three experts left.
Next question.
Next question.
Quick, move on.
Next question is Kevin on Twitter. He's asking, is Kim Jin-su leaving going to start a trend? Will it be difficult for even the larger budget Hyundai clubs to keep all their players, let alone corporate or citizen clubs? I mean, this has been happening for years. I mean, the best players have always kind of moved on to China or the Middle East to get better pay packets. It's not just Kim Jin-su. I think Kim Jin-su's grabbed a lot of attention because of, the club that's gone in for him, Al-Nassr, quite a big deal. And I think... there's been a lot of attention around it, but you look at Marcao in the past. You look at Leonardo,
EJ Sung,
Kim Min-jae.
It's
K-League, kind of what you like to tout, Ryan, but K-League can be a selling league if
I think it should be.
Play it right.
Yeah, I mean, the way I would answer this question is I hope so, because in an ideal world, what I would love to see is Sangju Sangmu continue what they've kind of started, and we have to have military service. Let's have players doing that at 20, 21, 22 years old. Let's make them into better players at a young age. Let's not wait until they're 28, 29 and they're just filling time. That's what I would love to see there. Get them developed and get them to move on. I mean, I think Oh Se-hoon is an example of a player that's going about things really intelligently. And to me, once that model's in place, I think K-League could be a great window to the rest of the world, a great window for Asia to the rest of the world. They need to start taking advantage of the player quotas that are in place there in order to do that. But I mean, especially there's a lot up in the air with the A-League right now. And there's a lot going on with wages in the A-League right now. There's a lot of Australian talent down there that could make the move up here. And, we're seeing players go directly from A-League over to Europe. If A-League clubs can't afford them anymore, let's get them up to K-League for a season or two, put some butts in seats when we can finally get people back in the stands, keep people in Australia interested in this league, and then sell them on to Europe. I mean, and that's just one country of many, 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 many countries that K-League could be putting players in their shop window. And again, from a business standpoint, I think this is a tremendous model to move forward with. Kim Jin-su moving, again, we don't know the exact figures, but Kim Jin-su moving alone might be enough to pay for Mo Barrow and Gustavo. That's a tremendous deal. That's good business right there. This is the way forward for K-League for me.
I think it helps because you become trusted hosts of young talent.
Exactly.
I think if you look at other leagues on a similar level to the K-League, maybe like the Austrian league, I know Rasenball Salzburg and teams, they're hosting a lot of young talent that are moving on fairly quickly, and that's what youngsters are looking for.
Yeah, and I don't see any reason that can't be the case. And then also simultaneously bring back players like Ki Sung-yong and Lee Chung-yong, who local fans know and who still have some good years in them as well. Ki Sung-yong's got a couple of good years left in him. I think that's a beautiful, perfect model. Let's do that all the time.
Okay, there is one more Kim Jin-su related question, so I'll just bunch that one in. That's from the Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors unofficial Twitter page. They are asking, should Jeonbuk get a more experienced or younger player to replace Kim Jin-su? I think we kind of touched on that. I think if there's a vacant position come the end of the season, then they should look to fill it with as younger talent as possible. It would be good to have experience, but only get experience if you can. The Jeonbuk have to get a reliable youngster in the winter, one that is first team level. If there's a vacant spot there, it makes sense just to go straight for left back. But if they do bring in experience, then they've got to make sure that if they are bringing in a youngster, that they are up to scratch and are going to get game time.
Yeah.
Even just look at the weekend, you had Han Kyo-won on the bench, who we've been saying all season he's having a career year, and he sat there on the bench because of the shuffling round of the under-22 talent.
Yeah, I suppose it's a nice problem to have that you've got this. Jeonbuk has this much talent. You know, they have to play the same rules as everybody else, so they do have to figure out how to squeeze in under 22 player. But I'd prefer a younger player just because it would solve a problem further down the line. And Jeonbuk have been good at scouting young players in the past. Just a couple of bad years recently. Anyway, I wouldn't say that bad. Just underused. Anyway, let's move on. Final question is from Asri Furman. It's actually a two-parter. One question's about Gyeongnam. Asri's asking, Gyeongnam looks like they're finally hitting form. What do you think the main factor is?
It's veterans. Yeah, we talked a little bit about this last week. I think they've been really finding the fountain of youth, or it's just a really good combination there that they've been able to rely on veteran talent. And we've seen a lot of K-League 2 sides go to youth, which again, I think is the way forward. But Gyeongnam have been relying on veterans, and it's working right now. But again, ask me about Gyeongnam again in 2 weeks.
Okay, and the second part of his question was about Busan. Is Chodok Jae the man to lead Busan in the long term?
I think last week we talked definitely for the rest of the season because of the options available this year. Although in the last week, we have seen some left field names being linked with K-League jobs, and it was interesting. I saw Robbie Fowler even mentioned that could touch into what you were saying about Australia being in an insecure position at the minute, the A-League. We might get some more left field names. But Chodok Jae, I would say stick with him this year, reassess in the winter, because what's the point of upheaval with 10 games to go?
Yeah. There is one last question that has come in on Twitter, and that's from the 94th minute, and it wouldn't be a mailbag without the 94th minute, asking, I'm still not convinced by Jose Moraes. What is the pod's opinion on him, and could Jeonbuk do better?
I'm just going to put my Barnsley shirt away, and then...
what a question to leave it on. I think he's a lovely man. Very, very nice. Very civil, always giving us a lot of his time. I have no problem with him. I think he's shown a little bit of inflexibility in his tactics. I don't know how much of a say he has in his tactics, but he's shown a little bit of inflexibility. Tends to just crowbar players into the same formation rather than try and adapt to them. He has got them playing shorter passing, but I just don't know whether it's as incisive. His contract's up at the end of this season. I don't know if...
I can't imagine him coming back.
I think if Jeonbuk don't win the league or don't win anything, which would be the first time since 2013, then there may be words.
I mean, I think my short answer there would be that he didn't win the title last year. Kim Do-hoon and Ulsan lost it, and he got Jeonbuk there by playing Chae Kang-hee's tactics and players. I've not seen him do anything to innovate that team. He hasn't had them fall off a cliff. So I guess kudos there. but he had the most talented side and played largely the tactics of the successful manager that was there beforehand. So, yay! Like, I don't know.
I think Jeonbuk eventually want to move to Kim Sang-sik probably as full-time manager. He's the assistant. He was the assistant under Jae Kang-hee and didn't have his coaching badges when Jose came in. I think he's probably got them after 2 years. And Lee Dong-guk is now taking his coaching badges and looks set to be moving into coaching in the future. I don't know whether it'll be next season because he's always got one more year in him. But yeah, I think Jeonbuk would try and probably move to a more in-house option in the future.
Well, if Juventus is anything to go by, then you just take a club legend and just give him his first ever coaching job right away. Be fine.
Yeah.
Pirlo will be fine. Pirlo will be fine, and Lee Dong-guk will be fine next year. It'll be great.
Anyway, that is the end of the mailbag there. If you'd like to support us, you can support us via Patreon. That's patreon.com/K-League United. COVID has sidelined things a little bit this year, but we are working on getting a few things going. We're working on getting the live stream up and running this year. We do promise it will happen. I promise. There are exclusive editorial pieces on there as well if you want to read that. I know our very own George Slade, he's uploaded another Korean overseas piece that's usually out every month. You can follow that from today. There's full player interviews, there's podcast extras on there. We have the K-League Survivor Challenge, which is a little bit too late to enter now, as we're entering the final stages for that. But that's also worth looking at next year as well. Tiers start as low as $1, but there's also $3 and $5 options.
Get you all sorts of those extras. You can hear Paul Neat's voice much more often if you're on Patreon. Also, if you want to hear these voices live, you can do so every Thursday on Football Nation Radio down in Australia. And if you subscribe via iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, or wherever you download your podcasts, and leave us a review, 5 stars preferred, then we will enter you into this month's K-League Kit Contest. Teased this a little bit last week. We do have our first ever Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors kit giveaway going on right now. This is on the official K-League Twitter. If you go over there, just give that a little retweet. Then you're entered in that way, or you can leave a review and we'll get you into that contest as well. Speaking of Lee Dong-guk and what could be his final kit for Jeonbuk, that's what we've got up on the site right now. Matthew's shaking his head no, it's not going to happen. He's going to see Pirlo in charge with Messi and Ronaldo on the same team, and he's going to think, you know what? I can get Kim Jin-suk back here. We'll do this. That's going to be the inspiration. Anyway, on the note of Kim Jin-suk coming back to K-League, I'm Ryan Walters. Thanks so much for listening.
정조선 공격 폭격기 김신우